Hey guys, it's Saru, and I wanted to make a quick video this time. I swear it's quick. It's not going to be a long video. Damn, it's already a long video. About the upcoming MMO Wayfinder, which is coming out both on PC and consoles later this year. Now, a lot of people have been asking me about this game and whether I knew about it or not, and I mean, I'm just like everybody else. We all kind of saw this, and there are reasons why I haven't covered this game particularly, but I'm going to explain some of those reasons in this video, and then look through all the confirmed information about the game, and then just deduce whether or not this is something that you might be interested in, or if I might be interested in. So let's get right into it. So I'm gonna get this out of the way because I think that, especially with content creators, sometimes what we do is that we have a piece of information that's key to the video, and then we would leave it somewhere in the end or something to keep people intrigued and watch the whole video. So I don't really care about that, so I'm just gonna tell you, Wayfinder is not an MMO, it's not an MMORPG, it's not an MMO light. Whatever people are coming up with random titles for this type of game, it's not that whatsoever. I had spoken privately with the community manager of Wayfinder. It would have been maybe 2 weeks ago, and we had a one-on-one conversation about a few things, but most importantly that they don't want to call this game an MMO or an MMORPG or anything. They're kind of staying away from that, specifically because it's not that. This is an online action game where players can play with one another and there are certain roles, but even though it's kind of instance in a way, it's really not like, I don't know, Vindictus if we're trying to take it that way. So that is the huge disclaimer, okay? So if anybody skipped this part of the video, because usually people skip this part of the video because I usually give like some history or whatever about a game, so now you know from the get-go. So I've been covering a lot of MMORPGs and I just haven't gotten around to Wayfinder because it's not an MMO. So I'll likely include this game in a video that's coming up later this month for I think the top 30 MMOs that are coming out this year. So yeah, that's out of the way, so let's get into Wayfinder and see what it's all about. So Wayfinder, like I said, it's an online action RPG where players can go on, they can choose a particular role or character and kind of go through those motions. So in this whole thing, it's about controlling the chaos. So Digital Extremes, which did create Warframe and they're I think working on the upcoming Soulsframe, did say that this game is about customizing every play experience. And in the term of Wayfinder, Wayfinders are the heroes, I guess you can call them, of the game. And if you've played games like Gauntlet Dark Legacy or Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, this will kind of be in that similar kind of feel basically. So out of the official description, Wayfinders are born of the gloom, but sworn to push it back to reconnect humanity. Wielding arcane magic, mystical tech, or cunning weapons, only Wayfinders can slay the invading forces and push back the gloom. Customize the way you fight by choosing your weapons and gear and augmenting your powers with the echoes of your fallen foes. I felt like a narrator there for a second, I just got in the mood. So currently, as of this moment, there are 5 Wayfinders and there will be a brand new one every season. So we're just gonna go through them so you can kind of see what they're all about, and maybe this is a character that you might want to play, and we'll see what the restrictions are here. So we have Wingrave, who has a spell-forged armor and is sustained by the faith in the architects. He's a natural leader and a true champion, always ready to defend the innocent and to smite the forces of evil. Well, I don't know. So apparently the complexity of this, so how hard or how difficult the class is. I've never actually seen the word complexity when it comes to showing a character or a class, especially in MMORPGs. It usually says difficulty to kind of like master basically, but Wingrave particularly apparently is extremely simple to learn and to kind of master. He's a close combat class, so if you're used to maybe being a warrior that has a shield and a sword and you kind of have a tanky stance and you kind of like that type of thing, but at the same time you like to be up close and personal, this is the class for you. So Wingrave is like a tank basically, that's all he really is. He's a support class and a defense class. He can heal the allies, so that's actually a really cool class to have, and it's really interesting to think that this class is noted to be not very complex to learn. So that's something if you guys really want to play kind of a tanky class, kind of a paladin. Actually, I should have just said paladin to be perfectly honest. Paladin is probably like the perfect way to explain Wingrave. So as of right now, we can see 4 basic abilities. One is Righteous Strike, which is this one that's playing in the background and has been playing for a little bit. And the next one is Radiant Pulse. So what it does is that it forms a divine shield. So if you have like a fancy enemy that you're fighting and they're shooting stuff at you, you can kind of use this to create an invisible shield almost, which will block those attacks. And if the rest of your allies are standing behind that shield, their defense will be boosted. Now, one of the really interesting things is Judgment. This ability is really interesting because he basically will put a spell on enemies. Let's call it a short-ranged AoE towards enemies. If you hit them, every hit will restore your own health. So as a scenario, if I'm with my friends and they are fighting these monsters, and let's say my friend Billy decides to use Judgment on these enemies, if I were to hit any of the judged characters, I would receive some health. But yeah, I think that's a cool way to support your team. And lastly, we have Divine Aegis. So if you are, let's say, around the tank, so in this case, Wingrave, and he uses this ability, there's going to be a powerful barrier that goes all around him in what seems like maybe a 10-meter radius, I guess, and anyone that's inside it will heal over time, and they will be immune to damage for the duration that the ability stays up. So yeah, I think that's a really cool character, Wingrave. So if you're interested in being kind of like a paladin class, this is definitely for you. Next up is Silo. So Silo is a bit more complex to learn. He is a character that can easily switch between melee and ranged, and if you're somebody that really likes to kind of do both, kind of like an assassin, this is probably like the class that you would probably go with. So Silo also has 4 different abilities, one being Firebomb, which is very simple. He just throws a firebomb at enemies and it will deal damage over time to them because they're burning. This can cause a chain reaction if you use Oil Bomb as well, which is the next skill. So Oil Bomb is just a bomb that you throw at an enemy and it'll slow them down, it'll give them some additional damage. If you combine this with the Firebomb, it'll do even more damage. Then you have Radiant Clone. Radiant Clone is really interesting because you can dash backwards and you'll leave like a hologram of yourself in the place of where you just were. This will confuse the enemies, allowing the enemies to just attack the hologram, and if you want to fight the enemies while they fight the clone, you can do that. Clone is temporarily just taunting the enemies non-stop until it expires or until it's completely destroyed, so you have some time to kind of escape if you really want to use it that way. And lastly, it's Ground Zero. So Silo will use EGG or Egg out to shock out all the enemies in a certain amount of radius for a short time. So it's just a big AoE that just slows everybody that's around that area and it deals damage over time. Next up is Nis, who is definitely one of the more complex characters that exists. Nis is an Eldritch Shadow Dancer and is just a non-stop assassin. Now, just like everybody else, she also has 4 different abilities. The first one being Shadow Step, which is very simple. She just dashes into a line, dealing damage to anybody that is in that line. Now, that initial dash will deal damage, but what's cool about it is as you dash, there's a shadow, I guess you can call it, that was behind you that's a little delayed, which will also cause damage to the enemies. Then there's Umbral Aura. This is more of a buff, so what happens here is that she uses this, and her next 3 dodges that she uses will pierce any enemy nearby with the shadows that she has. Vengeful Shade. This is also a little bit of a buff, I guess you can call it. She'll become immune to attacks just temporarily, and she'll damage enemies that are in front of her. And finally, Gloom Shroud. Gloom Shroud, I guess you could consider it as an active buff. Once you use this, you can use Shadow Step as much as you want with no cost and just keep using it until the buff is over. Then we have Senja. So Senja's a bit of a showstopper. She's a dramatic lady that likes to fight up front and beat the hell out of her enemies just right in their face. So with her 4 abilities, the first one is Gladiator Pummel. So she's gonna punch forward, and then she's gonna kind of do a showboating kind of thing, you know, where people kind of like flex their muscles, and once she releases that punch, it'll buff her next weapon attack. If you like brawler types of characters, this is probably something that you would like. Now, while you're showboating, you can charge that completely, and if you do, the damage of the punch that follows up after showboating will be increased. Gain Favor. It's basically another showboating ability. She's just kind of just being over dramatic. You can hold it, which you'll randomly hear crowds kind of cheering in your favor. When you release it, it will taunt all the enemies that are nearby towards her, and it will also buff her and the allies that are near her. Lightning Grasp. Now this one's very cool if you like to be a tank class that likes to taunt and pull things. This is a very good ability that can be used kind of in cohesion with Gain Favor, because you'll pull all of the enemies that are able to be pulled in the area towards her. And finally, Grand Finale. She almost transforms her weapon and herself into a lightning spear. She just charges at an enemy, smashes them right in the face with a punch, and it will deal massive damage to them. And of course, it will fill up her crowd's favor, which is something you want to keep doing, which you can also get by using the Gain Favor ability. And finally, Kairos. Kairos is probably the second easiest class that exists right now. He is a more ranged based character. I guess you can call him like a mage or a wizard or a magician, whatever you want to call it. He's more of a mid to high range character, even though he has a scythe. So that's kind of weird. He has 4 different abilities as well. One is Savage Rake. With this ability, he will basically slash the ground, which will deal damage to enemies in front of him. If you use something like Siphon Radiant, this will create a large wave of energy around him, kind of like an AoE as well, that will damage enemies that are all around, and it will absorb their power, which will reduce your own cooldowns, and by doing so and killing an enemy, it will grant an Arcane Fragment, which Arcane Fragments can be consumed to use some skills at no additional cost, such as Savage Rake. like arcane focus. So this is similar to Wingrave a little bit. He's gonna mark enemies in an area by, let's say, putting a spell on them. But as allies or yourself decide to hit these enemies that have these marks, those marks will build up and grow up in power until it's maxed out, or when it's about to expire, it completely detonates and adds additional damage to the enemy. And lastly is Shockwave. So Shockwave is basically as it sounds, although honestly it looks like a tornado to me. He will summon a shock and awe from the sky, which you could have just said tornado, but that is what it is. And what's cool about this is that out of that vortex, I guess you can call it, will result in sort of a gigantic shadowy fist dealing massive AoE damage to that particular radius. So those are the characters that are currently available, right? There's only 5 right now, but as I said, there will be brand new ones that release seasonally, whatever that means, whether that means real world seasons such as winter, spring, summer, or fall, or if they're talking about seasons like a battle pass season or something like that, which, I mean, let's be real here. So yeah, I mean, just like Dungeons and Dragons recently, or even like the game Gauntlet, you can just go out and explore with hunts and expeditions and events and different areas that you can go, let's call them dungeons and stuff like that, to discover new areas and ways to craft weapons and build up your gear to become even better. Now there's plenty of stuff to do. People can go out and look for lore books to kind of collect different things, do some side quests, pretty much your online run-of-the-mill RPG, and you can do it with friends. From my understanding, there's no linear story that's going to be, you know, kind of infused with the gameplay. You kind of create your own path and playstyle and storyline by playing this game. Now there will be some zones that players can go and explore that's going to be completely open world, but again, this isn't going to be something where you see a massive amount of players like you would in MMORPG, I guess not really nowadays. This is very different in the sense that you can work together and you can play with people, and in fact it's kind of encouraged to kind of create teamwork with this game, but it's not necessarily in the sense of like you're going to see thousands of players around you. However, there's sort of a housing system called apartments, which is kind of like a big neighborhood, and you have your own apartment for your own hero or champion, and with this you can kind of customize it a little bit by sprucing it up with items that you find around the world or stuff like that. Now if you played games like Vindictus where you have kind of a social hub, or Tower of Fantasy I guess is also kind of like a social hub, most recently at least, I'm not trying to compare it to that, or Call of Duty World War II, or even Anthem, which I guess I probably should have mentioned to kind of not curse this game, it's kind of in that way. You'll see some characters, you'll see some people, and you can kind of do that, but outside of that it's not really as immersive as an MMORPG with like endless quests and PvP and so on and so forth. So that's something for you guys to know about this game. Just to clarify, this is not an MMORPG, this is not an MMO necessarily. This is just an online RPG that players can go and play together, and you can kind of team up and do adventures together basically. The Wayfinders is definitely something I'm going to be trying, because you never know, right? I mean, I haven't been able to really get into a game recently, like just really get into a game and find my home, so to speak. So maybe this will scratch that itch. It does feel a little bit like Monster Hunter, I guess. So yeah, are you guys going to be playing this game? This game's going to be free to play. It's going to be online, going to be available on PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and the Series X and S, as well as PC. So if you're interested in playing, let me know in the comments below. Right now you can sign up if you really want to at playwayfinder.com. Tomorrow they're going to start sending out waves, so if you watched this video today and you haven't done that, maybe you'll have a chance. But if you're interested in the PlayStation 5 version, there is going to be a closed beta for that on January 19th, so in 3 days from this video, and you should have enough time right now to kind of sign up for it. But regardless, the game is scheduled to come out for early access at least in spring 2023. But yeah, anyways, let me know in the comments below what you guys think, and we'll talk about it there. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and click that adorable f***ing bell to know when I upload a brand new video. And don't forget to come join my Discord if you want to chat and hang out. Much love, and as always, till next time, friends.